Celebrating and Taking Charge of ADHD is an innovative group coaching program incorporating mindfulness as an essential tool throughout. This podcast addresses a number of topics that we face on a day-to-day basis and celebrates the precious human life we have all been given. We are already good enough the way we are. However, you may be aware of some of the symptoms associated with ADHD that hold us back, so let's take charge of it together. This is episode 1 of Why to Celebrate ADHD, and I've got Sue Hart with me, and I'm going to be asking her a few questions about the world of ADHD. So, Sue, thanks for coming along, and here we go. So, Sue, I understand you have had a diagnosis of ADHD too. Most people go through a mix of emotions once receiving the diagnosis. So what is the reasoning behind celebrating it? Most people go through a mix of emotions once receiving that diagnosis. So why to celebrate it? What's the reasoning behind celebrating it?
Yes, Jono, that's a really good question to start off with. Well, I got diagnosed 2 years ago, and there are a mix of emotions that you go through, and it's similar to that of the grieving process, actually, as you lose a sense of who you are or who you thought you were, and then suddenly everything becomes clear and you get present to how it's affected your whole life, especially with relationships. So the first emotion I experienced was actually denial. So this was the ego's response to saying it's not me, it's the others. And you go into this blaming defense mechanism. It's all done to self-protect, basically, the ego. Then the anger comes along as well. So, and that's saying, why have I just found out now? Why didn't my parents notice it? Why didn't teachers notice it? And again, it's more blame, and it's not very helpful in getting to those emotions of celebrating. And basically, mindfulness has helped me get present to what is, through understanding that we only suffer due to not accepting what is in the present moment. So now comes the celebration. So why to celebrate it? Yes, many people ask that. Why have you set up celebrating ADHD? It's the worst thing that could happen to me. Well, it is a celebration because it shines a light on how our brain works. And when we can understand why we do what we do, then we start to see that there is a choice. And that choice comes in between the stimulus and the response. This is the celebration and liberation of the mind. So people often say, why to celebrate it? And my answer would be, because you now know what you're dealing with. The awareness has come to light. So when we've got the awareness, now it's time to take charge and do the work and introduce behavioral change now. And it's not just with other relationships around you, it's also the one with yourself. That's worth celebrating.
It's a very strong answer right there. I really like that. It's very, very good. And I suppose it's just to add to that, it's about viewing it as a superpower, because in some ways it really is. Some of the things that come with ADHD can really be harnessed in such a positive way. So really spot on answer right there. And the next one is, what has been your greatest personal achievement in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think the greatest personal achievement has been overcoming fear. And most recently, that has been done through a motorbike ride, which was all the way to Montenegro and back. And it was a journey. So many obstacles in the mind, so many inauthentic fears coming up. And that's without the weather changes to contend to. So it was a major, major achievement to ride all that way and come back safely. And I really owe gratitude to my partner, Haim, for being my supporter and mentor along the way.
Must have been a real good journey in terms of self-development as well, I suppose. And kind of, yeah, just being able to increase the levels of that as well. And that leads me well on to my next question, which is who has been your biggest supporter or kind of mentor recently?
Yeah, would have to say it's Martha Collins, who is actually taught underprivileged kids, and she taught them with love and gave them belief and encouragement in their abilities to fulfill their dreams. And hence, that's one of the passions behind Celebrating ADHD, is to identify that maybe we think differently and we behave differently, but we have a huge amount to offer the world. And it is about harnessing those superpowers and celebrating ADHD.
Couldn't agree more. And this next question, I think it's a question that a lot of people really should ask themselves more. And it is, if you could give advice to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
Yeah, if I was giving advice to my 16-year-old self, it would be, thinking back on it, it was a very, very difficult time for me. And I was kind of forced to sort of grow up and be an adult, as my brother died in a car crash when I was 15, and it just changed family life overnight. So I was out there in the big wide world, not quite sure of what was going on and what to, trying to live up to this expectation of being a good daughter and also a good son for the one that they lost. So my advice would be, it's okay. So you're good enough the way you are. And just make sure that you give yourself self-compassion and take the time to express yourself. As if you don't express yourself, then you're not alive. And life is about being alive.
Definitely. And having that self-acceptance, I think, is so important, because you can't really grow without having that level of self-acceptance and being in touch with your passions as well. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And the final question for you now is, how can our listeners connect with you online?
Yeah, another good question. Well, listeners can go to the website, celebratingadhd.com, and there's a contact us page on that website, but you can also book a discovery call in and to find out more about the group coaching course, and also just to chat about ADHD one-to-one coaching. There's also all the popular social media platforms like Facebook page, Celebrating ADHD, or Taking Charge of ADHD as the group, and the Instagram and Twitter as well. So just reach out and connect as soon as you can.
There you go. You heard it from Sue herself. So don't go and do that. Go and check out the social media and the website as well. And we'll see you back here for episode 2 of the Celebrating ADHD podcast. Thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you for downloading. You've been listening to the Celebrating ADHD podcast, empowering people to reach their full potential. Celebrating ADHD works best combined as a holistic treatment program, so we advise you to consult your health specialist for medical advice. If you are not sure if you have ADHD, please get in touch, as we can recommend a medical expert, as the diagnosis is all part of the journey. One of the best ways to take charge of your ADHD is through connecting with others that have ADHD too. Please follow us on the Celebrating ADHD Facebook page, Instagram and Twitter, or join the members area at www.celebratingadhd.com.